set us all free.
Have you ever looked into cosmological map with a critical view? Have you noticed it looks a bit like zoomed, as Arne Gazikostas mentioned before, or Shadowlands looks made up for you as well? Hello again, it's the Lore Freak. As always, we have a question today. What if the physical universe we live in is just an illusion? What if there is a clockmaker or an architect who designed this whole system just to supply the Shadowlands with anima? It may sound far-fetched, but after the recent lore reveals, I am sure I can convince you today. Recently, the player base have noticed a book in Tazavesh, the upcoming Broker Mega Dungeon, which belongs to a so-called Mad Broker who discovered horrifying truths about our universe and about the first ones themselves. We will get to his notes later, but first let me explain my theory back in August 2020, which you can find both on my blog and on Reddit. The links will be in description. So, in Warcraft Chronicles, it is stated that our universe came to be after the clashing of the light and the void, and as we know, they are struggling to have total dominance over the entire reality. So, the Chronicles has been written by the Titan's perspective. That means I am free to assume before that explosion happens, there could be something out there. Before our version of the universe came to be, there could be another one. So, I have already talked about the veil, which have been designed to cloud our vision. What if there is an architect, just like how it was in the Matrix, who have been designed this veil and present, or rather chained, our reality, the physical universe. So, we could not see what we were not meant to see, and as Sylvanas has stated, we are not even allowed to choose our afterlives by ourselves.
From our first breath to our last, every decision is made for us. Then, the afterlife decides what eternity we must endure. We can't even choose who we couldn't control anything.
The thing is, there is no need to be a single architect. As I have covered in my theory about the veil, after the banishment of the first ones, the eternal ones, coupled with the pantheon of order, life, and light, have architected this veil to imprison us.
The Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the sixth version.
How about Zoval? Well, Zoval is the agent Smith of the simulation, or how I prefer to call it, as Veil. But his goal is not as dark or twisted as Smith's. His goal is not to rule. He wants to bring everything around us down to open our eyes. He wants to destroy the veil, but he needs to free the first ones through using Azeroth's power first. To understand what I have just said, check out our theory about the first ones. Now, I hope I could convince you a bit so far. To sum up, I believe our eyes have been shrouded by a veil and we are imprisoned in a kind of simulation. The veil has been designed by one or multiple architects of the cosmic forces, except disorder and the void. So, it's time to talk about the recent lore reveals I spoke about at the beginning, and hopefully everything will make sense in the end. A broker called Alfirim who have been called as math in the high society of brokers, have been managed to decipher ancient scrolls of the first ones, which in fact had their own unique language. Through his researches and the reports of the brokers who have been spying him, we have learned a great deal about the first ones and why the Shadowlands is really important. You can check out his entire notes in the description. We will focus on just some of them today. Each architect gave a portion of themselves, and thus the pattern was drawn. Now, this is the obvious one. As I have said recently, the veil, or the simulation, has been designed by multiple cosmological forces and their architects, a clear reference to Matrix. Our mission remains focused on following the path of the first ones and securing their secrets. The brokers have actually been serving to the first ones is a video of its own. But I need to mention something. The brokers have incredible similarity with the Ethereals, who have somewhat created the Ethereals, a Void Lord, Dimensions the Old Devourer, who was actually a first one. Just as we, from our first moment of consciousness, know that death is the foundation of all existence. I knew the first ones have been kind of obsessed with the cycle of life and death, and this is why Shadowlands is really important. Remember what Loval said back in the end of 9.1 announcement cinematic.
Death was never meant to be chained.
Death was not to be chained. The first ones were not to be chained. And now, let's get to the fun part. A few final questions for your consideration, good reader. What if, again, this is purely speculative, the mortal plane is not some distant corner of reality that the first ones created to supply us with souls and anima? So, Alfirim seems to have believed the first ones created the mortal realm specifically to supply the Shadowlands with souls and anima. Ring a bell? First, during our theory about the first ones, we have speculated that the first ones created a realm of reality to harness and use this power, so the soul energies of the mortals would not waste away, and instead to be used to keep the dimension of death going. So, the mortal beings and their life's experiences will be protected from vanishing into non-existence. For more on to this, can we check out what I have speculated back in August 2020? The universe, the design itself is flawed from the beginning, meant to be just a false reality, or rather, a prison. Maybe that is why anima is really precious and had to be stored in one place at every single version of the universe. This place named Shadowland. We still don't know how anima first came to be, but we will have an idea during or after Shadowland. But for me, one thing is certain, it's like oil, a needed energy source to feed upon by our true creator and maybe his civilization, the clockmaker and the first one. Ring a bell? Human fields to feed upon energy, the machines. Now, at the moment, I don't think the first ones were the ones who have been literally drinking our anima to feed, but in my opinion, the eternal ones are, as the mortal realm has been providing them an endless supply of anima from the beginning of time. That is how they grew stronger and banished the first ones, by abusing the anima, unlike the first one's intentions. I am sure this theory seems a bit far-fetched, but these revelations fit some of my greatest theories so far, which One of them was back in 2020, and I am really happy that speculation, in particular, is about to be proven true. At the least, its main idea. A prison designed to feed upon the anima of mortals endlessly. That's everything for today. I hope you have liked this theory. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you liked it, considering a like and subscription, which would help me a lot in the long run. 9.1 is finally here, so we have much to talk in the upcoming weeks. Until next time, see ya!